Today we are going to talk about design considerations if you're designing your own kitchen and all of these things that are kind of known within the interior design community and to no one else. So today I'm going to share with you everything I learned and how I incorporated it into this kitchen. This is a big deal if you're laying out your cabinets in a room. I'm going to talk first about the minimum measurement that you want between cabinets so that you can easily walk between them, and also so that you can easily open the drawers adjacent to each other without hitting each other, and do things like open a dishwasher and still be able to walk around it. The other thing to consider for proportions is your island light. So you may have an island where there are multiple lights and there's instructions online for how big those lights should be and what the spacing should be and distance from the end of the island and all of that stuff. But if you're like me and you just have one light that comes down in the middle of the island and you're doing a big pendant light, then the rule of thumb is that it should be a third to a half of the width of your island. Anything smaller will look kind of sad and anything bigger will look crazy. So even though this looks really big, it is actually only less than half the width of the island and makes a huge visual impact in the room, and I love it. But bigger lights are more expensive. Other spacing considerations for your island, if you plan on having an overhang and stools on the other side, there is a recommended minimum overhang so that you can comfortably put your knees under and not bang them up against the side of the cabinet underneath. And then there's also recommended spacing between chairs. So originally I was hopeful I'd be able to fit 3 chairs. The rule of threes, 3 things together, they just look nice. But it ended up I only had the space for 2. But I'll show you why I didn't end up extending this island. So if we're looking at clearance between walls and cabinetry, then this actually has more clearance than is the minimum. And I could have brought this in a bit closer and been able to fit 3 stools. They would have been a bit close, but it would have been possible. But the reason I didn't is because I wanted this clear passage from this doorway from the dining room straight to the oven. One, because I just like the way it visually looks to be able to look in and clearly see oven without this blocking it. But 2, I also just didn't want to be walking in this room late at night and have to dodge the corner of a sharp island as I get around the kitchen. So I liked having this pathway completely clear, so I decided to make my island a bit shorter for that reason. Because I planned and built all of these cabinets and their layout and where all of the appliances would go, I also became a little obsessive over the details of what the cabinets looked like next to each other. And I analyzed a ton of photos of designer kitchens that are designed by real interior designers. And I noticed something in the design of the cabinets. No 2 adjacent cabinets were exactly alike. So this cabinet has 3 shelves going down. There's not going to be another 3 shelves going down cabinet next to it. And sometimes I was a bit tricky because it made more sense sometimes for me to have the pull out up top and the big drawer down below and have these 2 next to each other. But I found ways to shuffle things around so that no 2 cabinet fronts that look the same are next to each other. And I do think that looks a lot better and more professional. But while you don't want to have the same 2 next to each other, you also want to have symmetry. Symmetry is very pleasing for the human eye. So this is my cooktop, and I have these 3 big drawers below. You'll notice that flanking it, I have 2 cabinets that look the same. They're not the exact same width. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that because of the clearance I needed for various things, but they are the same design style with the pull drawer on top and the knob drawer down below. And that's not only here on the stove top, I also did that to flank the sink, and I also did that to flank the oven. Having that symmetry of the cabinet fronts, I think it just feels right. I mentioned this in my cabinet organization videos as well. The other thing that just feels right to me when it comes to cabinet fronts is not having drawers of different heights stacked on top of each other. I just don't like the way like having a short drawer and then a long drawer and another long drawer just looks like, and that's just a personal preference. It's not a designer standard, but I do love the way having 5 skinny drawers looks. But 5 skinny drawers is not always practical because it's nice to have some deeper drawers to fit other things. So for this section, I have 1 actual skinny drawer up top, and then I have the false fronts on these to make it look like it's the skinny drawers, but it's actually a deep drawer, and same thing for the bottom. So it was really annoying and fiddly to do, but I do think it was worth it. Just aesthetically. It's very pleasing to me. When it comes to cabinetry hardware, I do think it looks better to have at least 2 different types of pulls that you are mixing and matching throughout the space and to be using them the same way each time. So I decided to go for traditional hardware of having knobs and these cup pulls. And something I'll say, if you do the cup pull route, I've seen some people use the cup pulls all the way down on multiple drawers. I would not suggest it, because here is how you actually open a cup pull drawer. You have to get your hand underneath it and then pull it out. Now, if I had a drawer all the way down here, I would have to go all the way down, get my hand underneath it and pull it out. Versus if you have a knob like this, you can come from it up top and open it, and it just saves your back and it's less annoying. So in the long run, even if you like the look of multiple cup pulls stacked on top of each other, it's not super practical, and your back will probably thank you if you don't do that. If you end up doing another kind of pull that doesn't have this on top and you can reach in from the top, then that won't be as much of an issue. Now on the cabinets themselves, I think it looks better to just have the same kind of metal on all of the knobs and pulls. So I used an unlacquered brass that I aged, but I do think it looks nice to have other metals used throughout the room so that it's not just the same metal color everywhere, which can feel a little bit overwhelming. So you'll notice in here that I used unlacquered brass, but I also used an oil rubbed bronze that's honestly so dark it almost looks like matte black. And then I used copper accents throughout the room. And that just kind of adds a little bit more complexity and I guess sophistication to the design, that it's not all the same metal throughout the room. Another big consideration for any room is lighting. Where do you need task lighting, or you put your big overhead light? I'm not usually an overhead light person because they're usually too bright for me. So I put mine on a dimmer, and that makes it much more pleasing to me. And that's honestly the light that I use most in this room because I'm able to dim it to whatever level I want. Now, if I'm working around the stovetop, I can use the sconces here. These are also on dimmers. These are really just more aesthetic, to be honest with you, because I also have lights that turn on with my vent. And these lights really put focus directly on the cooking itself, which makes it very simple. So I don't really need the sconces, but they're just so pretty. Over here, you can obviously tell that this is the darkest corner of the kitchen. There are no windows that feed directly into it, and it's a great place to store vegetables and things that I don't want to go bad. But it's not great if I actually want to see what's going on back here. So for that, I have this wall-mounted little swivel light that plugs in, and I can turn that on and have task lighting, and I can shine it in different directions. It's very nice. And then over here by the sink, if it's late at night, there's no light coming in through these windows, and I have the overhead light on. I still can't really see well what's going on here. So I have this lamp, and it's my favorite lamp in the whole world. I found it at a Goodwill, and I think it's an antique, and I love it so much. I rewired it, and I also put on this dimmer. Everything has to be a dimmer in my life because I don't like bright lights. One thing I was worried about when I was designing this room is that I knew I wanted to have a white trim throughout, but I wanted the cabinets not to be white. And I was worried about what it would look like to have this white baseboard dead end into these purpley red cabinets. And honestly, it looks fine. I don't know why I was worried. So if that was a concern for you, just know you just have to make that a nice, crisp, clean line, and it looks really nice and intentional. Now, if you have a cabinet with doors next to a wall, another thing you have to consider is having enough clearance here so that when you open this, the pull doesn't hit the wall. Same thing goes for corner cabinets. So if you're gonna have them open, make sure that this knob is not gonna slam into these adjacent cabinets. You're going to want to put enough of a spacer here so that they don't hit. If you're getting a big farmhouse sink like this, I highly recommend installing a drip rail below. And what this does is that if water drips off, and it won't slide down onto your cabinets and leave all these water marks. Instead, it goes here. You can wipe it off the rail. If you don't, it'll go on the floor. It's not going to leave marks on your cabinet, which is really nice. And I made this one with wood that I wrapped with copper and then aged to look like a burnished antique copper, but I've seen people just use solid wood before, or even a piece of marble or something that they had fabricated. Now for window treatments, I consider doing Roman shades in here, but honestly, I really like the amount of light that comes into this room, especially because I made it quite dark, and I wanted as much light to come in as possible. But if I do want privacy, I put in just these little cafe curtains, and I can always do that, and then the neighbors can't see in, I can't see out, and I have all the privacy I need. Plus, they just look really pretty. They looked prettier than this before. Let me fix this. Okay, now they look prettier. You going to apologize? No. I'm gonna fix this one too. And you may ask, Renee, why is this one shorter than the others? It wasn't originally, and then a cat peed on it, and I had to wash it. and then the linen shrank. So either I need to buy a new one of these or I need to figure out how to stretch linen. If you have any suggestions, please let me know. So that is a peek into how I designed this kitchen. I probably left out a bunch of stuff. If there are questions you have about things, please let me know in the comments. But I hope this was helpful. And again, I'm gonna do a blog post on it. So you don't need to take notes. You can go there and find all of these suggestions I have for you. Fiddly to do, but come here. Come here. Don't pull down my shorts. I think it was worth it in the end. Gap here against the wall. Why are you destroying my curtains? Why would you do that to me? So disrespectful. Don't do it. Hey. Hey, hey, hey. I see you. Tell the people why you're so terrible. Okay, bye-bye.